Today we're going to talk about Lydian mode. Lydian mode is the fourth mode of the major scale. Its formula is root 2, 3, sharp 4, 5, 6, 7, and root. There's two reasons why you want to know the formula. Number one is so you can construct the mode. And number two is for your improvisations and compositions. So for constructing the mode from scratch, if you were to take the formula for Ionian mode, or the major scale, which is the same, it's going to be root 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. And let's say if that's a C major scale, we're going to have the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. So if we wanted to turn this C major scale into Lydian mode, we would take the fourth degree of that scale and we would raise it a half step. So the perfect fourth is going to become an augmented fourth, or sharp 4. So the F is going to become an F sharp. Another question that comes up a lot is, where does the sharp 4 come from? Why does Lydian have a sharp 4? If we give each one of these scale degrees a name, so if we're in C Lydian, the spelling of that scale is going to be C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C. We can do a parallel comparison to the C major scale. So parallel means both scales are starting on the same root. So we can compare the notes in C Lydian in parallel to C major. We see that the roots are the same, 2s are the same, 3s are the same, but here's the big difference. It's in the fourth degree of the scale. So in C major, we've got a perfect fourth, but in Lydian, we've got an augmented fourth. So that's where the sharp fourth comes from. The 5s are the same, 6s are the same, 7s are the same, and the roots are the same. For improvising and composing, you're going to want to bring out that sharp 4. That's your money note right here. So lots of sharp 4, guys, and you'll sound great. So the next step is to build a modal chord progression. That seems to be the mystery with a lot of people, so I'm going to solve that mystery right now. What you want to do when you're building modal chord progressions is find the parent major scale of the mode that you're trying to build. So if we're in C Lydian, which is on the fourth degree of the major scale, we got to get back to 1. So we got to get back to Ionian, or the major scale. So if it's C Lydian, we know that we're going to move a half step back to the third degree of the scale, which is going to be B, then a whole step back to the second degree of the scale, which is A, and then a whole step back to the first degree of the scale, which is our Ionian, which is going to be G. So the parent major scale for C Lydian mode is G major. So let's write down the notes in that scale. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. So it's important to get the key signature right. So for G major, you want to include that F sharp. Okay, second step is to determine what the 1, 4, and 5 chords are. So in the key of G major, the 1, 4, and 5 chords are G major, C major, and D major. So just remember, when you're working with the harmonized major scale, and in this case, in triads, your 1, 4, and 5 chords are always major. All right, so let's just kind of make a little note of that here for the second step. So the 1, 4, and 5 chords are G, C, and D. Okay, third step is to take the root note of the mode we want and put it in the bass of those 3 chords. And this is probably the most important step right here. So what we're going to get is G with C in the bass, C with C in the bass, which is redundant, so we're just going to call that C, and D with C in the bass. And what we have here are slash chords. So the letter on the top left is always your triad or your chord. So in this case, it's a triad. Just remember the triad is the root, third, and the fifth. Okay, so in this case, it's the notes D, F sharp, and A. Okay, so we got a D triad or a D chord here on the top left. The bottom note is always going to be your bass note. So the bottom right note, bass. So this is really easy to perform on a keyboard. So just think right hand would be doing D major, D, F sharp, and A. Left hand is doing C in the bass. What I really like about slash chords is they're an easy way to build a more complex chord. If these chords were given names based on their C root notes, their names would be a lot more complex. Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's first figure out what the notes are that we're dealing with in each chord, and then we'll assign each one of those notes an interval to determine what the chord is. So for the first chord, we've got C for our root note, and then we've got the notes in the G major triad, which is going to be G, B, and D. Okay, we're not going to worry about C. It's what it is. For D with C in the bass, we got C for our root, and then we've got D, F sharp, and A for the D major triad. Okay, so C is going to be our root note, G is our fifth, B is our seventh, and D is our second or nine. And all of these are relative to C. Over here, we've got C as our root, D as our 2 or 9, F sharp as the sharp 4 or sharp 11, and we've got A as our 6 or 13, and that's in relationship to C. Couple things, where did the 9, the 11, and the 13 come from? So in the second octave, your 2 becomes the 9, the 4 becomes the 11, and the 6 becomes the 13. And those are known as your chord extensions, so your extended chord tones. Okay, so if we had to give this first chord a name, it would be C major 7 sus 2. And this guy on the right, D with C in the bass, would be C major 6 sus 2 sus sharp 4 no fifth. So we can see that these two chords here, C major 7 sus 2, this isn't too bad, but it still might be a lot for people to deal with. But this one here, C major 6 sus 2 sus sharp 4 no fifth, I definitely, for a lot of people, it's just not a lot of fun when you're sight reading your way through a chart to have to do that. So that's where the slash chords really come in handy. They are, it's clear that they are a much easier way to building a complex chord. So let's get on to our chord progression here. So I'm just going to stick with the 4 and the 5 chords. That's all you need to build an effective modal chord progression. Most of the time is just the 4 and the 5 chords. So we've got C for one measure, and then we've got D with C in the bass for our next measure. Okay, and let's, before I play this example, let's go and let's draw these chords out for you. So we're going to have the 4th finger on fret number 8 on the low E string, and then the 1st finger, let me get this right here, 1, 2, there we go. So the 1st finger is going to bar across fret number 5 on the D, G, and B string. So the fingering here will be 4, X, 1, 1, 1, And then for our next chord, we're going to keep that same root note on fret 8 on the low E string. That's going to be played with the second finger now, and we're going to bar the first finger across fret number 7 on the D, G, and B string. So our fingering will be 2, X, 1, 1, 1, X. And let's play this bad boy. Let's hear how this sounds. Okay, so when I think of Lydian, the first guy that comes to mind is Frank Zappa. That was one of his favorite modes to use. So you can think of some of his songs like Inca Roads or Watermelon in Easter Hay. Joe Satriani's Flying in a Blue Dream. Steve Vai's Salamanders in the Sun or Answers. But the big heavyweight champion that everybody knows, it was composed by Danny Elfman, is this one right here. And that's right, the theme to The Simpsons. And basically what you want to do when you're working on ear training for your modes or anything in that matter is you want to use association. Association is taking something that you already know and relating it to something new. It's the best way to input new data and to make it stick. So when you're learning your modes, when you're learning your intervals, when you're learning chords, from an ear training perspective, use association. So there's way more examples out there. You just got to go find them. And that's half the fun, right? Is trying to find examples that have meaning to you. And that's it for Lydian Mode. So I hope you guys had fun. I hope you guys learned something. Keep checking back. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. Don't forget to give your guitar a hug. And until next time, I'm Scott Szeryk, and we'll be talking to you soon.